Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're diving into a topic that's honestly brought so many coffee lovers to the brink of absolute despair, but also to moments of just pure caffeinated bliss. In this explainer, we're going to completely demystify the seemingly complex, high-pressure science of home espresso. We're breaking down that highly specific 9-bar pressure process of forcing hot water through finely ground coffee. The goal? Transforming it from a frustrating guessing game into a predictable, incredibly rewarding daily ritual. So get ready to take some mental notes because we are getting right into it.
Now, if you've ever stood in your kitchen staring at a messy, sour, or bitter cup of coffee, feeling completely defeated by a machine, and maybe wondering why you spent thousands of dollars just to create a tiny, bitter puddle, I want to validate that frustration right now. Why is making espresso so incredibly hard? Well, it's because espresso is an absolutely unforgiving process where every single tiny variable is deeply connected. You press a button and coffee comes out, sure, but what's actually happening underneath is a violent, high-pressure extraction. If you change just one tiny thing, your tamp pressure, the amount of coffee, heck, even the humidity in the room, everything else shifts right along with it.
So I really want you to reframe how you think about this. Frame the extraction process not as some act of brute force, but as a super delicate art. As our sources point out, think of it like tuning a musical instrument. Just a small adjustment can make everything sound, or in this case, taste, right. It's honestly just like baking a delicate soufflé. One wrong move, one little misstep in your prep, and the whole thing just collapses into a bitter or sour mess. You aren't just making a cup of coffee here. You're conducting a highly precise chemical extraction.
Okay, before we even think about touching the dials on your machine, we have to establish the non-negotiables. This brings us to Section 1, the crucial foundation: beans, water, and heat.
These numbers are the absolute prerequisites you need to nail down. They're the literal building blocks of your cup. First up, your beans. They absolutely must be rested for 14 days from their roast date, but never older than 4 months, otherwise they've completely lost their flavor profile. Second, and this is huge, no tap water. Tap water is usually loaded with chlorine, which creates instant bitterness, and if your pipes are rusted, yeah, you'll get a metallic taste immediately. Your ideal water should have a pH of 6 to 8 and a total dissolved solids or TDS count of 90 to 150. Finally, temperature stability is an absolute must. Your machine needs to be heated to somewhere between 195 and 205 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 90 to 93 degrees Celsius. Think of it this way: if your foundation is cracked, your espresso is going to be too.
So with our foundational metrics completely locked in, we can move right along to Section 2, the 6 Barista Secrets, a chronological journey.
Here is a complete visual map of the journey we're about to take. We're going to walk through this exact sequence together, from flashing the group head to mastering grind size, controlling brew time, using your distribution tools, preventing channeling, and finally dialing everything in correctly. Having this roadmap in your mind is really going to help you understand how one step feeds perfectly into the next.
Okay, let's dive right into this first secret. Before you brew, you must flash the group head. What does that mean? It just means running hot water through the machine without the portafilter attached for a few seconds. Why do we do this? Well, if you pour hot coffee into a cold system, the temperature drops instantly, and that leads to a super inconsistent sour extraction. Flashing the group head flushes out any leftover coffee residue from your last shot and ensures the metal components are properly heated and stabilized. It takes literally 10 seconds, but it makes a world of difference.
Moving to Step 2. If you master your grind size, you've honestly solved 80% of your espresso problems. See, espresso relies on finely ground coffee to create resistance against those 9 bars of water pressure we talked about. The grind size is just the physical size of your coffee particles. If the particles are too big, like a coarse grind, the water faces basically zero resistance and just rushes right through. But if the particles are too small, they pack together way too tightly, creating massive resistance that the water really struggles to push through. Finding the exact right size, that's your main control lever.
Right, so the crucial point is how much of that ground coffee we actually use and how much liquid we end up producing. This brings us to the golden 1-to-2 brew ratio. Step 1, you weigh exactly 18 grams of coffee into a standard basket. Step 2, you extract. Step 3, you stop the extraction the exact moment you hit 36 grams of liquid yield. You're just multiplying your input by 2 to get your output. But to do this, you absolutely must use a mechanical coffee scale every single day. Guessing just leads to inconsistency. You know why professional baristas make the same great coffee every day? Because they measure every single day.
Now that we have our 18 grams of coffee in the portafilter, it's kind of a messy pile, right? Secret 3 is to distribute and tamp.
First, you'll use a distribution tool to level the coffee grounds, so there aren't any weird hills or valleys. Then, you use a tamper to press down and compress those grounds into a uniform, compact puck. Remember this, water is lazy. It always wants to find the easiest path down. If your coffee bed is perfectly uniform, the water is going to push through it with perfectly even pressure, extracting all those delicious flavors at the exact same rate.
But if you fail at distributing and tamping, you're going to encounter the absolute silent killer of espresso, channeling. Channeling happens when water finds a weak spot or a little crack in your coffee puck and aggressively flows through that single hole instead of pushing evenly across the whole surface. This is a total disaster because the coffee around that hole gets wildly over-extracted while the rest of the puck gets completely ignored. The result? You get this highly confusing mix of sour and bitter tastes in the exact same cup. If you're using a bottomless portafilter, channeling is super easy to spot because the espresso will violently splatter and splay literally everywhere.
Let's move over to the machine and see how this all builds into the actual brewing phase. Secret 4 is controlling your brew time. The very second you press that button and the extraction process begins, you must start your timer. Don't wait for the first drop of coffee to actually hit the cup. Start the timer the exact moment the water hits the coffee. Timing is essential because it helps us understand what is physically happening inside the portafilter during the extraction. And the magic number you're looking for on that timer is between 20 and 30 seconds. That is your golden target window to hit your 36-gram yield. This timing isn't just random, by the way. As water hits coffee, compounds dissolve in a very specific, predictable order. First the acids, then the sugars, and finally the bitter compounds. By landing your extraction right in that 20 to 30 second window, you capture the absolute perfect sweet spot. You're balancing the bright acids with the sweet sugars, and you're cutting it off right before those harsh, dark, bitter compounds can ruin the cup.
But hey, what if you hit 36 grams in just 15 seconds? Or what if it takes like 45 seconds? Well, this is exactly where Secrets 5 and 6 come into play, fixing your flow and dialing in your grinder. Dialing in is really where science meets intuition. It requires making small, gradual adjustments to your grinder based on the results from your timer and, of course, your palate. If your shot was way too fast, you dial your grinder slightly finer to increase the resistance. If it was too slow, you dial it slightly coarser.
But wait, there is a massive beginner trap here. The absolute golden rule of dialing in is this. You must always discard the first shot after making a grind adjustment. Why? Because grinders retain coffee inside their chutes. When you change the setting and run the grinder, that first dose is going to be a 50-50 mix of the old grind size that was stuck inside and the new grind size you just set. If you test your flow with that 50-50 mix, your results will be completely skewed and you'll literally just end up chasing your tail. So toss that first dummy shot, or purge it as the pros say, and test with the second one.
Okay, so we know the mechanics, but how do we diagnose what's actually going wrong when we taste it? Let's get into Section 3, fixing extraction mistakes by reading the flow. You are always battling between two extremes here. First, we have under-extracted espresso. This shot ran way too fast, usually under 20 seconds, because the coffee particles were just too big. The water rushed through, pulling only those early acids, so it tastes unpleasantly sour, thin, watery, and it has a really weak, pale crema. Now, on the other extreme, we have over-extracted espresso. This shot took way too long, maybe over 30 seconds, because the particles were just too tiny. The water really struggled, pulling out those late-stage bitter compounds. It tastes harsh, burnt, and super dark. Your entire job is to use your grinder to steer safely away from both of these cliffs.
Which perfectly brings us to the overarching philosophy of this entire explainer. Let's look at Section 4, the golden rule: balance, consistency, and detail. When you're comparing your morning results, here is exactly what you are looking for. A perfect shot boasts a flavor that is incredibly balanced and sweet, completely unlike the sour or bitter notes of a bad shot. Visually, a perfect shot is going to have a thick, rich, golden crema right on top, whereas a bad shot just has this thin, sad, dissipating foam. The flow of a good shot is smooth and steady. It honestly looks like warm honey dripping off a spoon, which is entirely different from the uneven, aggressive splattering of a bad shot suffering from channeling. And of course, that perfect shot lands right in our 20 to 30 second window.
Now, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative question to consider the next time you turn on your machine. Are you just rigidly chasing a perfect 25-second time on your scale, or are you actually tasting the flavor of the coffee? Remember, the timer is a highly useful diagnostic tool for sure, but it's really just a guide. Different beans roast differently and they age differently. At the end of the day, your palate is the ultimate judge. Master the science, control your variables, but always let the taste in the cup be your final answer. Happy brewing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.